Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz. We got a treat for you tonight. As promised, we have Dr. Gary Brucato, and he is here to talk to us a little bit about Israel. He's one of the most deranged, and we'll talk to him about where he is on his scale that he created. And if you have not, please check out Dr. Gary's book. Gary, how does it sound bad?
Can't understand you.
It's all wompy. Give me a second here. I'll take care of it right now.
Sounds like you're in a tin can with some
I'm
bees.
gonna take care of it right this second.
No. Tin can with bees. That's what it sounds like. I think it was the music. Are you there? We've got some dead air. Somebody better do some stand-up or something. Anybody got a question while we're waiting? Because my sound is working. Well, I'll introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Gary Brucato. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist, a researcher, and an author. I do a great deal of media, commentating on crime. Also, I got into the podcasting thing because of my book, The New Evil, that I did with Dr. Michael Stone. The Israel Keys case is one of those ones that exploded onto the public scene, I think, partly because of Maureen Callahan's book, American Predator, made him something of a household name in the world of true crime. The truth is, even though there were some quirks to him, he was basically a garden variety, sexually motivated serial killer of the category 17 type. But there were some things about him where he used technology in such a way that he exemplified new evil, which is right at the heart of my writing. And I'm sorry about the murky background. I've been using that to not have to worry about situating myself. There's your sound. You sound better.
I sound fine.
Yeah, now I understand you perfectly.
And I sound normal again. Sorry about that. You were doing a great job. I mean, I was just going to let you keep going. Just, you're a born lecturer. That's for sure.
Thank you.
But check out Dr. Gary's book, The New Evil, and it's quite a fascinating deep dive. And we're going to talk about where Mr. Israel Keys, who we're going to be talking about tonight, one of the most, we always use the word prolific, but I would say sinister, scary, just a very, he was everything, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't just a serial killer, but he was that, but he was everything in between as well. Everything bad about the world.
I think of him as a sort of a boogeyman. But he, being a psychopath, he had what we call criminal versatility. It's one of the characteristics of psychopaths, and his criminal versatility, had him doing everything from robbing banks to houses to setting fires to kidnapping to committing sex offenses to committing murder. And I think, as we'll see, Israel Keyes was a person with a very dead, schizoid, detached inner life, and was constantly thrill-seeking to kind of not feel dead internally, and everything was like a kind of drug-like high, having to do with outsmarting people, the godlike feeling of them not knowing that they were walking right over buried instruments that might be used later to kill them.
Yeah.
Things like that. And what makes him also fascinating is that he was one of these people who had a kind of double life, where he had this sort of seemingly loving relationship with his daughter that he was trying to protect by keeping a lot of secrets. After he, even until after he was arrested, he still kept secrets and tried to make arrangements to keep things from her. So it's interesting stuff. The things that he did to some of the victims are so perverted that we really can't talk about them on the air, like the things that he did to the corpse of the last victim, and things like that. We can talk a little bit, but not. I don't really want to get into details of the sexual stuff, which unfortunately I'm aware of.
Of course.
And there are cases I'm aware of that he is suspected in. That if you look around on the internet, you'll see that people have wondered if he's been involved in, that a lot of people in the audience won't have ever heard of. So I guess we'll do what that normal thing where we'll we sort of read the background, and then I'll dive in with commentary. It looks like we have a lot of the usual suspects here tonight. I'm looking if there's any new names here.
I see some. I see some that I don't recognize, but I see a lot that I do as well. And
Good.
Carol just said, "Just got your book in the mail, Dr. B. So excited to start reading it." So that's very, very nice. And
I apologize in advance for any night terrors or jolting awake from horrified. It's not my fault.
It's not when you want to fall asleep to, like you're sitting there and you're getting groggy, like, oh yeah, and then you get up to once you get up to like I don't know, level 10, it's
I always remember when I first went on the interview room and Chris said, "You should all get it as a stocking stuffer for your," and I was thinking to myself, Chris, when you read it, you're going to realize that it's no stocking stuffer.
Well, first of all, it won't fit in a normal stocking. Second of all, stocking stuffers are more for like Pez dispensers and stuff.
This is true. I think it's funny, the cover of The New Evil with that skeleton on it. When the book came out, there was this little contest on social media to see who could name the character. I think that there was like an attempt to make the skeleton face a kind of iconic image or something. And not by the publisher, but just by people. And the person who gave it the name that I like the most was my nephew. Out of everybody, out of all the submissions, I loved my nephew's name. He was very little at the time. He was like 2 or 3 years old, and he said he wanted it to be called Trixie. And I said, why? And he said, well, because he looks nice, but he tricks you. And I think that's very clever. I also think the character looks like something out of Undertale, but that's another story altogether. If you remember Undertale, but I thought that was kind of cute. So anyway, let's dive into Mr.
Like a little bit of nepotism, but I'll let it go.
You like what?
It sounds like a little bit of nepotism, but I'm going to let it go.
Well, he didn't win. I just secretly thought it was the best answer.
Well, then you're a mean uncle.
I am the best uncle.
I guarantee that you are. Here's your copy of The New Evil for Christmas.
I would never.
I know you would.
But I love my nephew and my nieces. Don't even joke. They are light of my life. So
let's jump into Israel Keyes and a little bit of background about him. Israel Keyes was born in Richmond, Utah, on January 7th, 1978. He was the second of 10 children, and His parents lived in Torrance, California, and were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is LDS Church. And his father had served as a church missionary and served in a church mission in Germany. Keyes and his siblings were homeschooled until 1983. And after leaving the LDS Church, Keyes' father moved the family to a remote plot of land in North Colville, Washington, in Stevens County, where Keyes was 5 years old, isolated from society. The family lived in a one-room cabin without electricity or running water on Rocky Creek Road. So already, you're kind of seeing the stage set for isolation, poor living conditions, one of 10 children, just a very, that's quite a rough upbringing, especially as a 5-year-old. No running water, electricity, but it does happen. In Colville, the family attended services at a church called the Ark, which subscribed to the white supremacist Christian identity ideology. He's later described the Ark. What's that?
No. It's important to understand that there was a connection through that church to the KEYES, who were the the Kehoe family.
Yes, they were also serial killers.
Right. Chevy Kehoe was a domestic terrorist and a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, really interesting when you think of, what are the chances?
Very.
Two serial killers, kind of crossing paths. Incidentally, here's a bit of trivia as you're talking about him in his formative years. The accused, Brian Kohberger, had a very interesting thing in common with Israel Keyes, which is that they both very specifically idolized, or at least Kohberger was accused of idolizing, Ted Bundy. So for a long time, I don't know if whatever you're reading is going to say that.
Yeah,
but
Keyes
was into Bundy. Among the many books and things about crime that were in his possession when he was eventually arrested, it was clear that he had a thing for Bundy. I think that's interesting. Tells you a little something.
Why is that? Why do?
Well, I think you know what? I think we're going to flow into that as we go. But I just want to throw that out there. That he had a thing for Bundy. Someone in the audience saying something like, "I don't follow that opinion." I'm not sure what the opinion is. It's not a question that Keyes admired Bundy, and it's not a logical leap that someone with a bunch of pictures cosplaying as Bundy on his phone admired him. But I'm not sure. Perhaps there was some other meaning to that statement. Anyway, so moving along. So keep going.
She's talking about Kohberger.
Oh no, I don't. It's just let's just say, it's one of those things like, just because there's smoke doesn't mean there's fire, but there's smoke.
Yeah, well, of course, I agree with you. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about his adolescence. So the Keyes family eventually left the Ark for another Colville congregation, the Christian Israel Covenant Church, which taught white supremacist British Israelist doctrine. Mm-hmm. Keyes later aligned this church to have been militia-like for years. Mm-hmm. Some of the Keyes children were forced to sleep in a tent due to the cabin's small size and made to hunt their food, chop firewood, and work on local farms to support the family. As a hobby, Keyes hunted anything with a heartbeat. He freely admitted to skinning a deer alive to his peers at the Christian Israel Covenant Church. As a result, Keyes was ostracized by other children, with one girl recounting that Keyes' presence made my skin crawl. As a youth, Keyes, who stood 6'2", by the age of 14, admitted to shooting at a neighbor's house with a BB gun and starting fires in the woods, and the fires will be kind of something else that's brought up
Yeah.
later. He also broke into houses with another youth who subsequently avoided Keyes after witnessing him shoot an animal. On one occasion, Keyes stole several guns from his neighbor's residence and was forced to apologize by his parents after they discovered the cache. Keyes would also sell stolen guns to local adults. And around this time, Keyes' parents provided shelter to personal friends in the presence of their son, daughter, and Keyes' sister. Keyes tied a cat to a tree with a parachute cord and gored it with a .22 revolver. The cat then began circling the tree before crashing into it and vomiting. Keyes allegedly chuckled before noting that the boy, who later informed his father, had vomited in response to the incident. Keyes had an epiphany in which he felt that he was different from his peers who ran away from him. Upon this realization, he kept increasingly antisocial. He kept his increasingly antisocial behavior to himself. In addition, Keyes' mother began to notice some troubling signs, I would say so, in Keyes during this period when he began tuning into various radio stations and different things.
Right.
By his teenage years, Keyes had become a skilled carpenter, building his first wooden cabin for his family. At age 16, he also worked for Colville Contractor from 1995 to 1997.
Now, hold on a moment. One of the things that jumps out right away about this person is that he's so intensely visual. The construction work, for example, is not shocking, and the work he eventually is going to do, you're going to see it's very detached and nature focused, and so very visual guy, not particularly verbal, not particularly interpersonally warm, like a lot of people who are not verbal. And this is very common in people with psychopathic brains. People with psychopathic brains who have a tendency to be, some of them have a tendency to be left-handed because of the right hemisphere dominance.
Right.
Those are interesting people because they can be very dependent upon the nonverbal lateralized aspects of the brain. And people like that can be so lateralized that they lack emotionality, they're mechanical, they have incredible visual memory, so forth, but may not be particularly adept when it comes to connecting with other people. And I really picture this guy that way, like that kind of, not a person who became a psychopath, but a person with that kind of brain. Very visual, very emotionally shut down, bored, sensation seeking, empty, angry kind of guy. And, so everything for him, you have to picture it being like a game or a puzzle where it's about getting yourself excited to not feel dead inside and figuring everything out like a chess player would think in that kind of predatory way, right? So it's like an incredibly visual guy and very sensory, right? So that there's this interest in what it feels like to do whatever, right? So that's the other piece of it. And you really want to think about that. The more we talk about this guy, incredible schemer and very visual. And that I mention that because we're going to see that photography, very visual thing, figures into his crimes, particularly at the end, and it is also his undoing. The photography will be his undoing, and I think that's one of those little beautiful moments of justice and poetry that you see in some of these stories. But you definitely want to understand that about him: psychopathic and visual. Now, where does that come from? Testosterone. There's a high testosterone, highly visual guy, and look at his face, look at his height, look at his his symmetry, look at his and it shouldn't shock you. This is like high testosterone, kind of guy that would exude that kind of
6'2" at 14 years old.
And angry. Angry. I mean, testosterone. Testosterone makes you 8 times more likely to be aggressive, right? So I mean, you shouldn't be shocked when you hear that he was, setting fires and hurting animals. Now, I am not a fan of those. I guess demonologies would be the word for it, that they do when they tell the story of a killer growing up. They always like, it's sort of like the opposite of a hagiography when you tell the story of a saint, where it makes it sound like they never did anything wrong their entire life and all they did was pray and give away their possessions and whatever. Well, it's the same thing with people who do evil things. Be very wary of stories where every minute of their life sounds like all they were doing was horrible things, right? At 15 years old, he set a house on fire. At 16, he knocked over an old lady. At 17, because the thing you want to understand about Keyes is that woven in between that fragmented that life, he also had friends. He was likable. He could. Now, was he kind of a little icy and weird? Yeah, but there were people who cared about this guy. And that's what I think makes him scarier. We have a tendency to want to think of these people like, they're demons who couldn't relate to human beings. But the unfortunate reality is these people share our DNA. Like this guy has the same DNA you and I do.
Yeah.
And we don't have to resort to the demonic to understand this guy, right? He just was a psychopath. But anyway, so moving along.
So by his teenage years, Keyes had become a skilled carpenter. Okay, we talked about that. And he went to work for the construction company. Later, the family relocated to Smyrna. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure. Maine, where they collected sap for maple syrup production in a mostly Amish community due to their mother's religious zealousness. The Keyes children were forced to hide from their parents to watch movies with friends and were forbidden to learn musical instruments. Sometime during this period, Keyes renounced his Christian faith.
Yes.
Keyes declared his atheism to his parents, both of whom he had previously made tireless and constant efforts to please. After an intense argument, this led them to evict Keyes for blasphemy. They then instructed his younger siblings who looked up to Keyes to never have contact with him again. Keyes then became interested in Satanism and planned to commit a ritualistic murder. So obviously being ostracized by his family was a big turning point in his life, declaring atheism and things like that. But
right.
All right. So in the summer of 1997 or 98, he sexually assaulted a teenage girl, estimated age 14 to 18, who had been tubing with her friends down at the Deschutes River in Oregon. Keyes admitted that he stalked her from a tree line before threatening the girl with a knife and had very violently sexually assaulted her. Originally,
his intention was to sacrifice her to Satan because he had embraced Satanism. And it's very important to understand that, very important to visualize, because again, he's super visual guy. That what he did was he stood waiting in the river, not waiting, but waiting, right? Like an egret or something, with his arms out at this kind of turn where people would be coming down the river on these tubes. And the idea was like a reptile to just snap his arms, kind of like a crocodile would do with its mouth, and grab the victim of choice. And when this young woman, this girl, she was 14, I think, came on the tube and he grabbed her, the intention was to ritualistically murder her. He dragged her to a shed and did what he did. But it's very, very important to understand. Now, the other thing is, it is not certain that was his first assault. Now, anyone who follows comments I've made on your show or whatever knows that I have referenced that I'm writing about Keyes. And you remember me saying that, right, Josh?
Yes.
And oh, I didn't bother you by jumping in. Is that okay that I jumped in?
Of course, that's what you're here for.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read a paragraph I wrote, because it's probably going to get edited anyway. But I'm using this. I'm writing for a new book, and but this is the draft version of the paragraph. But I think it's extremely interesting because it refers to the year prior to what you're talking about, right? Sometime like a few months to a year prior. And it says, I got this from doing some research, and this is available out there if you Google enough. But just listen to this, because I don't think this has been talked about in books on Keyes. So I wrote, in March of 1996, Julie Harris, a 12-year-old double amputee and Special Olympics champion who lived in the vicinity of the Keyes home, went missing. Her purse and prosthetic feet were later located along a local riverbed, and the following year some children chanced upon her skeletal remains in a nearby forest. While her cause of death remains a mystery, there is some speculation that this may have been the first homicide committed by Israel Keyes not long after his 18th birthday. If true, it would predate the by nearly half a decade, the earliest murder to which he would ultimately confess. Now, just think about that scene, right? You know, the prosthetic limbs were sort of left next to the body. Now, I don't think most people would know that story about Keyes, that he was suspected in that. But this was a young, intellectually disabled, if I remember, child from the Special Olympics. And just think about that. That's the kind of person you're dealing with. He's guilty of that offense.
Yeah.
Right? Barely 18 years old. And then take that story and then couple it with the wading in the river and the snatching, and you really start getting the picture of somebody who, is an honest to God psychopath. Just, true blue. No guilt. Now, anyway, so I just wanted to read that paragraph. And that's a good teaser of the kind of thing I'll be writing about. But I wish I wasn't writing about such horrible things.
Yeah.
But it is in a chapter about the use of photography as a technology for evil and for good in true crime, which is one of the topics I'm discussing in the new book. How technology can be used either way, and Keyes exemplifies it. But anyway, proceed.
Sure. All right. So Keyes admitted that he stalked her from a tree line, threatening the girl with a knife, and originally planning a murder as part of a satanic ritual. Keyes let her go in the river tube he had abducted her from. Quote, "I was too timid. I wasn't violent enough," he told investigators. "I made up my mind I was never going to let that happen again." He also served in the military, and on July 9th, 1998, Keyes relocated and enlisted in the United States Army in the state of New York, where he served as a specialist in Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry, 25th Infantry Division. He passed a month-long preliminary course for the United States Army Ranger training. He was stationed at Fort Lewis and Fort Hood, also spending some time abroad while stationed in Egypt. Keyes befriended several soldiers, informing one of them that he would like to kill him. While at Fort Lewis, Keyes served on a mortar team. Former Army friends of Keyes have noted his quiet demeanor and habit of keeping to himself. On weekends, he was reported to drink heavily, consuming entire bottles of his favorite drink, Wild Turkey Bourbon. February 2001, Keyes was arrested in Thurston County for driving under the influence. Pursuant to a plea agreement, he was fined $350. Keyes was also a fan of hip-hop duo Insane Clown Posse, displayed posters of the musical act in the barracks. Keyes was awarded an achievement medal for his service as a gunner in the assistant gunner from 1998 to July 2001. He was then honorably discharged and relocated to Nay Bay, Washington.
Now, that story about him with the wanting to kill the guy in the service, one of the things that should jump out right away is that his victimology is strange. He doesn't have, like, especially for somebody admiring Bundy, he doesn't have the victimology of just wanting to assault and kill women, right? The other thing that's odd is, for most, if you look at Hazelwood, for example, I just edited and co-wrote a couple of chapters for Ann Burgess's book on sexual assault, and in the new edition. And one of the things I was reminded of in doing the research for the chapter is that Hazelwood, who pioneered looking into this, one of the people who did, showed that serial killers don't tend to kill their victims as part of the thrill. They kill them to get rid of the witness, or because they're accidentally killed because of the force of what you're doing to them. And then you sort of just start to do so after you have used the person in the way you intend to. But there are some serial killers for whom the killing is in and of itself the sexual thrill. Bundy is unusual in that way. For Bundy, the idea was the pleasure of feeling the person expire during the sexual act, because it caused what he would describe as a kind of orgasmic sensation of the body, becoming limp after it stiffens up and all these other horrible things. The thing is, for Keyes, I think there was that similar excitement, so that the sexual thrill of killing didn't require actual relations with the victim. He could kill a male and would still have that same pleasure, the orgasmic thrill, right? So he could kill a couple, for example. And that's interesting about him. So he is sexually perverse, but some of the sexual acts take on a quality where the aggression itself is arousing. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
He's kind of like an all-encompassing type fella. You can tell that he.
Well, the other thing is, he was also a necrophile. He's got the whole thing going on. Kind of right.
Everything in between. He's a bank robber. He's a serial killer. He's a pervert. He's a
park ranger.
Yeah, he's all kinds of things.
All of it.
He's everything, and that's so. And he was also really good at, like a lot of these serial killers, at sort of hiding who they are for a long time, at least to people at like arm's length. But you hear that when he's younger, and he's growing up with his friends, that what happens is his tendencies kind of come out, and he freaks people out because he thinks he's kind of comfortable with them, and he does something in front of them, and then they're like, oh my God, I gotta leave.
And that's where he's not like Bundy. He falls more into the 50% or so of serial killers that are a little more schizoid than they are, purely kind of charming, narcissistic like Bundy, where you could lure someone with your words or groom. This guy had a weirdness thing going on, and so there was always a kind of hiding behind these masks and being more than he was, or getting away from his home, so that he was like a different person, because he's not targeting people who knew him, right? He's got to go like far away from who he is, to feel like strong and all that. But anyway, so moving along.
Yeah. So let's see here.
We got to get that picture of him off the screen. His eyes like bore into you.
Yeah, there's definitely something about him, but let's see. I don't really have.
Those are that's his writing that he did in jail.
Yeah, and this is a timeline, and then this is like his weapon bags that he did.
Yeah, well, might as well start going through the other victims, because you're already showing Koenig, and that's the end of the story.
So Keyes targeted random people all across the United States to avoid detection, planning for months before he committed a particular crime. He specifically frequented campgrounds and isolated locations. He claimed to only use guns when he had to, and preferred strangulation. This was due to the pleasure he derived from witnessing victims lose consciousness in the struggle.
Right.
He claimed to not kill children or parents of children, primarily because of his daughter, whom he feared finding out about him and his crimes. However, police and FBI investigators were skeptical of this claim and suspected Keyes of killing several teenagers and children.
He's full of crap.
Well, yeah,
Everything he said, I never believed one word of anything that man said. But because he was someone who amused himself at lying and telling.
Well, he also was afraid of being caught and his daughter finding out. So he would lie about that easily. I mean, the guy's like, he doesn't really have any actual self-control. You know, I mean,
he was pretty meticulous. I mean, in terms of, you're talking about somebody who could delay killing a victim for years.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if people in the audience realize, but you're talking about somebody who would do things like not only use a meticulous costume, but do things like switch cars, travel across multiple states, put his cell phone in a bag of potato chips with a clip on it, thinking that the wrapping that the potato chips were in would block transmissions from the phone. You know, bury murder kits, which were horrifying. I mean, I'm sure you have a photo of one of them, under houses, and then return sometimes years later to kill the people with the kit that was buried under their home years prior. I mean, extreme forethought. So that in that weird way, he almost has too much stuff. It's almost like he has this kind of weird executive functioning where he can delay gratification for a long time, and yet has no conscience and can do anything without fear. And that's fascinating. I mean, it's like the executive functioning, you know, in some ways was there, and in some ways it isn't.
Right.
So it's really, really interesting to think about that. Yeah, so there's his activity, it looks like, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's quite diverse. I mean, look, he's all over the place. He's all over North America and South America and Central America, and good Lord, I mean, it was. I mean, he was a traveler too, you know, which is, you know, for what's that?
It goes with that schizoid
kind of
character.
Right. That's kind of a thing. All right, and so this is where Keyes did not admit to any murders during his 3 years in the United States Army. However, he did confess to attempting to rape a sex worker while on leave in Egypt, as well as a college student he met while on leave in Israel. He also confessed to committing bank robberies in New York and Texas. The FBI later confirmed that Keyes robbed the community bank branch in Tupper Lake, New York, in April of 2009. He also told authorities that he burglarized a Texas home and set it on fire. An FBI report stated that Keyes burglarized 20 to 30 homes across the United States and robbed several banks between 2001 and 2012. Keyes is believed to have begun killing in 2001 following his discharge from the Army, and he had been held he has been held responsible for as many as 11 deaths in the United States. Unlike most serial killers, he did not have a victim profile.
Right. Exactly.
Dr. Gray, how different does that make him?
Well, it's complicated because there may be people out there like that who don't get caught because they don't have a victim profile that makes it easy to connect crimes. Sure. I mean, that's sort of the thing. I mean, you never know with this guy what he was doing to throw people off and what he was doing because it was part of his sexual excitement. But I think the point is that for this guy, it was about feeling like God. And, you know, don't forget his parents paid a very great deal of attention to God.
Yes.
I always thought that for this guy who was gobbled up in the large number of children his parents had, the only way to get any attention was to, to be God. And that was a fixation for him. The idea that he was going to um, arbitrarily, shoot lightning into the world and kill random mortals, who had no idea it was coming, amused him. I think that was the whole idea, because if he was everywhere, it gave him a kind of omnipresent quality. And that's what I think you really want to understand about this guy is the scope was necessary for the grandiose core of him. And he was so grandiose, he took his own life rather than deal with being caught. I don't think it drives me crazy when people say he did that because he cared about his daughter and he was ashamed. He had no shame. He was a psychopath. He did that as an ultimate act of control. I have no doubt.
Out on his terms, when life was no longer, when he wasn't being pleased by life the way that he wanted to anymore, it was,
Yes.
Adios type.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
But
so are you going to go to each of the murders? Like, are you going to talk about,
we're going to talk about the victims.
Yeah, that's very important. They're way more important than this guy.
So possible, they call them possible victims. Keyes hinted at other murders and or was a suspect in other murders that coincide with his whereabouts or matched his modus operandi. However, he was not definitely linked to these crimes, and some of the victims' identities are uncertain. Julie Marie Harris.
That's the child victim I was talking about. The Special Olympics case.
12-year-old Special Olympics medalist in skiing disappeared on March 2nd, 1996, while waiting for a ride to a local church in Colville, Washington. Her remains were found on April 26, 1997, in a wooded area a few miles away. A cause of death was not determined. Harris was a double amputee, and her prosthetics, like you said, her feet were found by the Colville River a month after her disappearance. Keyes, then 18, lived in the area at the time and was questioned about her case after he was arrested in 2012, but he neither confirmed nor denied killing her. And a lot of things, one of the very common thing is, for some reason, some serial killers have no problem telling you that they've killed children, and then there are some that do not want that on their, sort of record, because some won't even talk about it. What was that? The coast to coast killer, Tommy Lee Sells.
Oh, he killed lots of children.
Yeah, but when you would bring it up, and he would tell you, he would never, there was one where he beat a woman who was pregnant, and she ended up delivering the baby. He would not talk about that for some reason.
You mean the Dardines? But that's in the New Evil. But if he is guilty of the Dardines, and I think he probably did that, the child who was still attached by the umbilical cord to the mother was posed. He was beaten to death with a baseball bat.
Yes.
And the baby attached to the umbilical cord was posed with her and another boy that was, another of her children, on a waterbed. They were posed in a kind of tableau, and the father was killed elsewhere, and his severed penis was placed on his tongue. And there are very interesting theories about why Tommy Lynn Sells might have done such a thing. He claimed it was because the father made a pass at him, but I don't think so. But the killing of the Dardines is one of the most horrendous of the cases. Now, it's very interesting. My co-author on the New Evil, Michael Stone, visited Sells. You can watch the interview on Most Evil. It's on YouTube. And I remember when Michael asked him, why'd you kill the children? Often by throwing them at the wall, things like that. And he said, why'd you do that? He said, well, I knew what it was like to be abandoned, to not have my parents. And I didn't want, after I killed someone's mother, for example, to have them grow up alone. So I killed kids. Like, in other words, it was an act of mercy. So then Stone said to him, people in the audience don't seem to realize we're making a side track into Tommy Linsells.
Yeah, we were talking about Tommy Linsells, the Coast to Coast Killer. We're sort of comparing him to Israel.
Comparing him, right. So, but anyway, so Michael said to Tommy Linsells, "Why did you have to kill the children?" And he explained what I just said. And then he said, "Well, why didn't you use a gun? Why did you have to kill them so horribly?" And Tommy Linsells' ridiculous answer was that guns are dangerous.
Yeah.
They didn't believe in them.
Yeah.
Now, there is all kinds of rationalization like that goes on. What was interesting in the Sells case was that his guilt about the children had to do with that he himself had been a victim as a child of assault. And he had also been a victimizer as a child. I mean, he tried to assault his own grandmother and his own mother as a boy. But he had also been a victim. I mean, he was taken in when he was a runaway by a man who abused him. So it's interesting to think about how some of these guys have guilt about that because of the shame surrounding their own abuse, that they are no different than the people who abused them, right, in their minds. And some of them, it's just like they want to savor that and not give something away that they especially enjoyed. It's disgusting. And for some of them, it's it makes them feel weak that they preyed on somebody that was so innocent and helpless. So that so it's sort of like if you were a hunter and you were boasting about killing large game, and then somebody was like, "As far as I know, all you do is kill mice." Like you would get kind of embarrassed because it wouldn't make you feel like a big man, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's how some of these guys get when they talk about that their victims were people that were unfortunately easy targets and things like that. It's a disgusting comparison, but that's unfortunately what you have to understand to think how these people operate. So look, with Keyes, you had that same thing going on where I think he did like to kill pretty much any human being, like Sells did, man, woman, child, family, whatever. But he did have that weird kind of embarrassment about children, I think partly because they were easy targets and he was always trying to come across like big man, and partly because he may himself have been abused or taken advantage of. I've always wondered that about Keyes. He took his secrets to the grave. But something happened to this guy. I mean, you know what I mean? He did not have a normal.
Yeah, and he kind of toyed with, investigators. Like, I'll tell you more next week, or I'll tell you, maybe tomorrow. But he was clearly, he held back a lot of things, like you said, and took a lot of things to the grave. They wanted many more answers, from him, but he was only willing to give up so much. And right here, I'm going to talk a little bit about his or read about his confessed victims that he confessed to, because he has what's really interesting about him was that he has confessed victims, possible victims, ruled out victims, they say that they kind of tie, or about 12 is sort of what I believe he has confessed to. But everybody not everybody, but investigators that have investigated this case believe that there are many, many more. Curious, do you also believe that? I'm sure that
yes, I think there are many more.
There was somebody in the chat earlier that was talking about that they were writing about Keyes in an unsolved murder, Oregon, I think. I sorry I missed it, but that it's very interesting. Look, he could have he could have hundreds of victims for all we know. I mean, so the confessed victims, and during interviews with FBI agents, officials in Alaska, Keyes directly admitted to 3 murders whose identities were confirmed. Keyes confessed to murdering 49-year-old William Bill Scott Currier, and Lorraine. Lorraine,
I hate this story
it's
because
not.
I'm too visual myself,
Yeah,
in an imaginative kind of way. And when I first heard this story, I could picture the entire thing in a kind of. I mean, that's how I help in the way I do, right? Because I can imagine.
I'm the same exact way.
Yeah, it's too much, and to be too good at that is hard.
Whenever I listen to anything that
Right,
has great detail, like a story or something,
right,
my mind just visually makes up, kind of the scene and
right.
the sort of the time period and all that kind of stuff. It's very
But I have a weird ability to be completely distant from things, so
mm,
that I can understand them like a scientist from like from over here without in a detached way. And of course, the catch of doing that is you don't you have to be careful in ordinary conversation because you're so comfortable with talking about things that you're interested in and other people are not, or they may not like that.
yeah,
So I have to be careful. I don't like in the cafeteria. Hey, can I sit here? And then go. So what are you doing today? Oh, I'm reading. What are you reading about? And then like I can't get into the details of it because it would be too disturbing. So I just choose to not talk about that stuff, because for me, I mean, that's why it's a great joy for me to have colleagues that are also up to their necks in this stuff, because ordinary conversation, I mean, the people in this audience would give their left eye to be a fly on the wall on any of those conversations that I have with these these other people that are kind of known in the violence and true crime world, because this is what we talk about,
sure.
vivid detail, and I'm sure people would be fascinated by it, but it's not
Well, and
ordinary
that's another thing that
conversation.
you and I have talked about.
It's only life, it's a, yeah.
And I'm telling you that, and this is, I know that we've been floating this out there, but we're going to take active steps to make this happen. But we are going to start a Patreon, and that you are able to go into great detail without restriction for people who actually, and I know, because we sort of do, we do kind of keep it, we're talking about very sensitive, very disgusting humans, and sensitive subjects here, with victims and things like that.
Of course.
But the stories go so much deeper than what we're willing to talk about.
Oh yeah.
Here. And the reason is because, first of all, I don't know. I don't, somebody who could be kind of coming by and watching, they don't exactly know what they're going to get themselves into, like if they're just kind of like, oh, what's this? And then, we're talking about.
I know, that's what I'm trying to say. When I start up conversations with people, I have to be. The other thing, of course, I have to be very careful about is I read people like a book in 2 seconds. I mean, it's like a annoying Sherlockian quality, and I have to be very, very careful. So I just kind of keep my mouth shut. But I mean, I'll talk to somebody in the bus, and in like 5 minutes, I got them. Like, done. And and I just pretend that I didn't notice, that kind of thing, because it weirds people out.
Yeah,
they just kind of and I don't even like to tell people what I do. I mean, it cracks me up. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm a psychologist. And that's it. Like, I don't want to get into it because it's too disturbing.
Yeah, exactly. And something like this right here. Oops, my daughter who's 12 walked in the room. I'll have to catch on replay. I mean, and so that yes,
right.
that's I mean, that is, we tell you that, look, this is the serial killer saga that we've been going through here. So it's not for everybody, but it is for a lot of people. And by the way, Dr. Gary, very generous of you with your time. I can't tell you how much we really appreciate it. I know people very are very grateful, that somebody of your stature and ilk in the true crime community is willing to take the time to talk to us laymen about things that we're interested in that we don't really understand. And I just wanted personally to, as your friend, say thank you. I know that you get all kinds of requests. I know that
Some of them are very special.
And yeah, but you make time for us here at the lab, and that's very appreciated. So
Well, you have to understand that I'm going to tread gently in saying this, but when I first started appearing on podcasts, and I have a lot going on and very little time, right? But I started doing it because I was astounded at how uncredentialed a lot of the true crime community was. I mean, people
sure,
were talking out of various orifices about things that they don't know about. And, that's weird to me. And I thought that it needed some more people who have a lot of experience with it to kind of inject um, more accuracy or professionalism or experience or whatever. And so I gravitated toward other people who had a lot of experience. And then I started to invite other people with expertise to come on, a lot of them have become regulars, popping up on a lot of shows because I drew them in. A lot of them had avoided doing podcasts for a long time, but I think it has to do with wanting to up the info level. But there are a lot of podcasts that are, um, somebody that's read a John Douglas book and thinks they know everything about crime,
sure,
or
yeah, of course,
as like the board with the red yarn, like I always joke about, the conspiracy theory board and this,
yeah,
thing, or and a lot of them also I think there's also a lot of grifting that goes on, and a lot of so I have no patience for it. So the idea was I wanted to inject experience in there, but I don't have a lot of time to do it because unlike people who don't have any experience, I'm actually doing this stuff. I mean, I have to see patients or go to the jail or work on a report that's going to be used in a legal case or whatever, and so you don't wind up with a lot of time.
sure.
So that's why when I'm on these shows, I always seem like a perpetually exhausted pigeon. Because I'm you got to squeeze it in between 5,000 other things. But that's the point. So it had to do with wanting to inject some experience and clinical insight.
Kelsey said, "Boy, I'd love to hear some."
Well, it's a complicated because those people are, they're all people that you're seeing like for clinical evaluations. Everything is all protected by privacy. I mean, so I don't talk about them.
Cat Randall says, "I came because of the lab and got Dr. Gary. Thank you. We appreciate that, Cat. Thank you so much." And Cat also donated a membership. And D, who says that she's learned a lot from you, Dr. Gary. Sent 5 lab memberships as well. And June, thank you so much as well for your gifted memberships. So
okay. So KEYES, you want to talk about the
Vermont the Courier. So KEYES broke into the Courier home on the night of June 8th, 2011, and tied them up before driving them to an abandoned farmhouse where he shot Bill before sexually assaulting and strangling Lorraine. Their bodies have never been found. 2 years prior, KEYES hid a quote unquote murder kit near the Courier home, which he later recovered and used during the crime. After the murders, he moved most of the kit's contents to a new hiding place in Parishville, New York, where they remained until after his arrest. KEYES' last confirmed victim was 18-year-old Samantha Tessia Cohen.
Koenig.
Koenig. Excuse me.
From Anchorage, and it's interesting that she was close to home.
Very, yes.
Got a little sloppier at the end there. You see.
He certainly did, and I think believe this was his undoing. Correct?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's his last. The whole story. He puts on a costume. He goes to the coffee kiosk. He pulls her literally through the window of the drive-through, ties her with zip ties. The whole thing. And this is the infamous thing where, after strangling her, he necrophilically abused the body. kept her in a cabinet while he went on a cruise in a very cold shed so that she wouldn't decay. And then, of course, decides that for ransom, he's going to send the father a photo of her alive, but she's dead. In the photo, her eyes and mouth are being stretched with fishing line. I don't know if a lot of people know that detail. That's fishing wire holding her eyes and mouth open.
I
And
have the photo.
yeah.
Now, once again, she's
being dismembered already when the ransom is being delivered. I mean, it was all
this was his elaborate plan, was to make her look alive. Now, it's not a gruesome photo or anything like that. She does look alive in the photo, but this is what he went through. This is the lengths that he went to. His crimes were absolutely diabolical, but then to stage her to be alive, I just don't know. To get ransom. I mean, it's just, Dr. Gary, you and I talk about this all the time. There's evil and then there's extra, and people and
right. There's bad and there's evil. Right.
Yeah.
The evil is the extra. These are the extra unnecessarily. Like, for example, that the clue leading the father to put the ransom up was put on a lost dog notice in the park.
Yes,
exactly. I mean, think of the objectification and the basically saying she's a dog. She's a lost dog, right? This guy's looking for his daughter. And, but show the photo.
Sure.
And you'll see.
Once again, like I said, it's not gruesome or anything like that.
It's just disturbing. Yeah. So the newspaper is placed there to show that, that's the date. In this photo, she was already decaying. You can see a little bit of the rigor mortis, the discoloration. She has clearly been dressed, but had been abused post-mortem sexually, so that she's got a mannequin-like kind of thing going on. And he puts this, fixes her hair and the whole thing, and then takes this photograph. And this is a good example of, it's a Polaroid, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But it's a good example of like a new evil in the sense that there's the use of this technology to do something a little extra. So he cuts her up and is dumping the body through the ice in a lake, covering a lake, while the ransom is being delivered. I mean,
he no longer has her. Exactly. He no longer has her body.
Right through the ice.
He dismembers her. He dumps her in the icy river or lake. I can't remember, but
lake. It was a lake.
It was a lake, while still demanding, I think it was like $30,000 or something along those lines. And he had I believe he had stolen her credit card or her debit card, and he
made her go into the house and get it with the PIN number and everything. In other words, as I recall, he takes her to a house where I think like her boyfriend lived or something with her. He takes her there. She gets out of the car and has to like get it.
Yeah.
Before he takes her to the place, home, where he strangles her to death and then abuses the body and then does all this. So that part of it is the robbery element, because this guy also got off on theft.
Well, that's what he showed up here to do.
Right.
If you look here, he showed up late. He orders a drink. She makes him the drink. She turns around. He's got a gun in her face, and he abducts her. And
right, and zip ties.
Yeah. So, but his initial thought was, because when he had tied her up and placed her on her knees, she had told him, "My dad's coming to pick me up soon." And KEYES was sort of hesitant, but then he was like, "That nope, we're out of here. We're leaving." And he took her. And I can't imagine how truly terrifying and terrified that she must have been during those.
I think it's best not to let your mind try.
It's very tough for me to not, but I agree with you. It certainly is. But
I mean, that what you showed in that photo.
It tells you everything. I mean, it tells
somebody's daughter.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. let me hold on here. So authorities believe Keyes may have murdered 48-year-old woman Deborah Feldman after discovering that he had frequently searched for her missing persons case on his computer. Shortly before his arrest, Feldman was last seen at her apartment in Hackensack, New Jersey on April 8th, 2009. Her body has never been recovered. Federal agents showed Feldman's image to Keyes, upon which he hesitated. He waited and then only said, "I don't want to talk about her yet."
Mm-hmm.
It's suspected that Keyes buried her near Tupper Lake, New York. Keyes is suspected in the murder of 58-year-old James Jimmy Lamar Tidwell Jr., an electrician who disappeared in Mount Enterprise, Texas on February 15th, 2012. He was last seen at 5:30 a.m. that day after he had finished working the night shift during a bank robbery in Azee, Texas. On February 16th, 2012, the culprit, believed to have been Keyes, wore a white hard hat similar to Tidwell's. Tidwell's hair also resembled the long, dark hair of the robbery suspect. When interrogated, Keyes claimed this wig was in fact human hair. When asked where he had obtained the hair, Keyes said, "You don't have to buy real hair to get real hair." He's a sadistic person. He liked to, everybody would talk about how soft spoken he was. He may have been soft spoken. And by the way, he has confessions on YouTube. You can type in Israel Keyes confessions. There's several videos out there about him confessing to these horrific crimes. I mean,
and to answer an important question that's in the chat, no, there was a sexual motivation, but the thrill was orgasmic. It was sexual for him. The strangling was a mechanism of sexual excitement. Now, you might say, is the strangling a form of torture? Now, if it were a kind of non-protracted kind of torture, in other words, he's not using like a torture dungeon or something like, some sort of like David Parker Ray, who's a category 22 in the New Evil, then you would put him in category 18, where there's non-protracted torture, but there is some torture. Some people make the argument that Ted Bundy would be an 18 because the use of belts and ligatures and things for slow asphyxiation might be viewed as torture. Mm-hmm. Which is, I think, a good point. But I place him in 17. I think he's a classic sexually motivated killer. Incidentally, if I remember correctly, one of these kits contained a sledgehammer, and that always bothered me. Like, what on earth is this? What's the sledgehammer for?
Yeah, it's hard.
I mean, I only know of one killer that used the sledgehammer, right? Lawrence Bittaker. Bittaker and Norris that went around in the van. They used a sledgehammer on a victim.
And this is where he would sort of hide his quote unquote murder buckets that they had found. But how diabolical is it that he, months and years in advance at times?
Pretty bad. I think based on what I'm seeing in the chat, Josh, that people would find it really interesting if you played a couple of minutes of him talking.
Sure.
And I think it would be useful to see his demeanor, his ice cold, detached, callous, reptilian quality that he has, and how every second of it he's like playing everyone.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting. And it would also be interesting to read the text of his suicide note.
Can absolutely do that.
Poem that he wrote to Samantha. I mean, to Samantha. He wrote a little poem to the victim.
I did, yeah.
That I'm sure was still being aroused by, after death and everything.
He's a real.
Yeah, the audience is saying like they absolutely want you to do that. So
let's do it.
Look at that, the buckets.
I know, dude. I'm telling you, he's a freak. Let me turn on closed captioning.
I remember talking.
Great, not
I
available. So
remember there's someone once who said that, who asked me um, if Israel Keys was the origin of the phrase bucket list. And of course, it isn't. The bucket list refers to things you're going to do before you kick the bucket. That's the idea, right? And if you want, I could tell you the disturbing origin of the phrase "to kick the bucket," but you'll never think of the phrase the same way if I tell you where it comes from.
if you'd like to, I don't mind. I mean, it's not something I use very often. So
But you know the expression.
yeah, very well.
It comes from slaughtering pigs.
That's right. Yeah, we did talk about this once. Yeah.
Yes, if you when a pig is killed and suspended, and the blood is dripping into a bucket, you know that the pig is deceased when the leg thrashes out and kicks the bucket.
Yeah.
And that's where the expression comes from. To kick the bucket means
like a terrible thing.
Gasp of life, right? It's just disgusting. You know, a lot of the phrases in the English language, if you know their origins, like, are sickening. There's tons of those.
Yeah.
I'm an animal lover, so I hate that with a great passion.
I am as well. All right, so
I thought you were a dog lover, but are you an animal lover generally?
What do you mean? Like,
do you love all animal? Like, are you an animal nut like me, or are you just you're a dog person?
No, I mean any animal, like it doesn't really matter. Cats, I like raccoons. I do not like birds that much. They're very pretty, but they're mean. I don't particularly care for them. But
Barry Morphew, who was recently arrested, is accused, allegedly mutilated lots of raccoons.
Yeah, and squirrels.
Yeah, and what?
Squirrels as well.
Yeah, but I think raccoons are cute. They were Michael Stone, the co-author in New Evil. He was obsessed with cats and raccoons. Loved them. I used to give him presents of things that were related to cats and raccoons. He was crazy about them.
No, I'm not just a dog lover. I mean, I love all animals, but like alligators and stuff, I don't care so much about. Does that count?
I think alligators are cute.
You do?
I mean, I wouldn't want to like play with one, but I think they're sort of cute. I'm crazy about all animals and plants. Anyone who knows me knows. I mean, I easily could have been a botanist. In fact, for a long time, I contemplated it. But I know probably about as much about botany and crime equally.
You like snakes?
I wouldn't want to have one, but I have no problem with them. But I think I can understand why they're scary to some people. But they're quite beautiful. I mean, you have to admit that the skin of them.
No question about it. Some of the patterns, some of the colors. I understand their need the need for them to exist in the ecosystem, that they are a very important part of it in certain areas. However, they just should stay away from me, and I'll stay away from them. And but
it's interesting because animals. I mean, we forget that people are animals, but the difference is that human beings have a kind of meaning making thing, that we have language and meaning making, so that we can have experiences that we don't understand animals to have. Like, that's why like lions don't knock on my door saying they have an existential crisis, or a cow doesn't cry because its spouse left it. There isn't that meaning making, and the meaning making is what I think causes madness. It causes depression. It causes a lot of the problems and also the joys of life. And so that's the thing with Keys is, unlike a lot of killers, it's really hard to see a narrative thread that makes meaning out of this beyond that it was just fun.
Yeah, right.
With most of these killers, you could say, like, I can understand the psychology of how this reflects this in their life. This is the playing field that we're leveling. But it looks like for Keys he was just an honest to God psychopath that was bored all the time and just thought this was a kick. You know what I'm saying? And that's it. Like Tommy Lynn Sells. I mean, Tommy Lynn Sells, there are reasons, but he used to say that at the end of the day, it was a drug. That Tommy Lascelles used to say that when he saw blood, it aroused him. And
Yes,
that was
he
the end of it. It was like a drug for him. Well, there's a
did.
little of that going on with this guy. So, but anyway, so let's watch. Look how bored he looks.
He's terribly bored. And by the way, I can't watch any like animal shows where it shows like another like dominant animal attacking a.
Why don't they intervene? You ever think about that?
Well,
Why the camera person doesn't go like, get off that lamb? You know, like stop attacking it. Like they
Well,
just
because they'll be next. That's why.
You think so? And then like David Attenborough is like, you ever watch those David Attenborough animal shows?
Yeah, but I can't stand them. I cannot standing watching other. I get it. I get that it's part of, if like I'm on Twitter or Instagram or something, and like one of those pages comes up and it's like, look at the beautiful nature and progress. I'm just like, do not recommend, block. I don't want to see any of it. I know it happens. I'm much more comfortable watching like an idiot fall off his roof drunk. Yeah. And I like that stuff sometimes.
I get it. I'll tell you something very quickly just to amuse everyone because we're about to go into the darkness here. My favorite David Attenborough video, if you ever get a chance to look at it, it's going to blow your mind. There is a creature, an animal, a bird, that is called a gorgeous lyrebird, Lyre, lyrebird. And this bird picks up the ambient noise around it and can perfectly imitate it. If they keep it in the zoo, it perfectly copies your voice and talks to you in it, like that kind of thing. Like it'll mimic you, like better than a parrot does. And so what has happened is that as the forested areas where they live are being sort of torn down, they have incorporated into their music chainsaws, cell phones going off, cars backing up, people screaming to each other like about lumber and tools and things like that. And the lyrebird goes into the center of the little forested area and it performs. It tries to do a beautiful song and it copies the music of many other birds. The more birds it imitates, the more attractive it is. But part of it is imitating these weird ambient noises. So it'll imitate like a kookaburra and some other bird, and then all of a sudden it's like chainsaw sound, car backing up, car horn, klaxon, the person going, "Pass me the timber," and then and that's part of the music, and it fascinates me. And but you've got to watch it to believe it. It's like it is just, and in the zoo, it is the most fascinating thing.
Absolutely,
just the most fascinating. Google it; you won't believe it till you see it. But that's what's called, the gorgeous lyrebird. And David Attenborough's, of course, I love his British accent, describing the gorgeous lyrebird is a wonderful video. Take a look. Anyway.
Talking about the hearing yesterday afternoon or the hearing yesterday morning?
Yes. Well, let's see.
You had two.
Yeah, it didn't. Let's see. First hearing.
And before somebody asked me, I already tried to turn on closed captioning. It's not available. Please don't be mad at me. I didn't do it.
No, it was pretty much strictly related to.
What's that?
No. For a split second, I thought it wasn't in sync, but it's people talking to him.
How about if you can give me the general question, we might be able to make a phone call and see if they can.
Well, okay.
Generally,
my position has been, and I made no secret about this. My position has been that I want to talk to them about the Cohen case and find out, where we stand with that.
But we can't do that, and they can't do that right now without.
Right. No, I understand that. But
so we don't want to talk about the Cohen
the
case.
impression that I spoke to him before, and he gave me the impression that he was open.
Dr. Gary, maybe we should, before we get too into this, talk about how he was caught.
Well, it was because he idiotically allowed himself to be photographed on the ATM camera.
So we were talking about how he had stolen or her debit card, right? This was his plan, by the way, which is, I've never heard of this one before, but he was quite the thinker, this guy. He was withdrawing money from her debit card. He did it once, and then I think he did it. Was it in Texas when they had put out sort of they were onto him
Right.
And he was pulled over by a police
Right.
officer after they got the footage. They knew what car he was driving. They asked him for his ID. He handed him his Alaskan identification. And they said, this is our guy. They arrest him. But what he was going to do was he wanted the father of this poor woman that he has just kidnapped and then, did that horrible stuff to by staging her. What he wanted to do was have the father put the money on her card so he could withdraw it from her card, his murdered daughter. And so that was his plan, which is
Dumb.
well, and it's dumb, it's diabolical, it's brazen, he got sloppy, and that tends to happen sometimes, but they kind of become emboldened. But anyway, that's how he got caught, and that's how his reign of terror ended. And people keep asking, is he still alive? He's absolutely not alive. He took his own life in prison. And made sure that he did a really weird thing too, where I think after he had cut himself, he had his neck tied up with something, so when he fell, kind of just collapsed over, it would also pump the blood out of him and strangle him at the same time. So
Open to that,
he was never a halfway kind of guy, was he?
but only if my attorneys were present. And I said, okay, fine. I'll talk to him. We'll set it up. That was a month ago. So there's communication.
Oh, I see.
That's all I can say about it because they're not here, to state their case, their side of the story. But I do know what they've been telling me, and so if he he made it clear that at least at that time that he was open to that suggestion that I had, and I'm assured that. I guess it just comes down to I don't know who to believe right now. There's there's a hitch in the communication somewhere.
You notice, Josh,
and honestly, I wasn't.
You notice his fingers, the finger length.
Yes.
Is the classic abnormality in people with high testosterone, where the pointer, middle, and ring finger can be equal in size. People who have high testosterone often have that abnormality, and or two of them are the same size, right? Whereas in the average person, they're all different, and in the average man, they're all different size. But he's got that weird hand thing going on, and you notice also how completely. And by the way, if you have that hand configuration, it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just seems to be correlated with that. But did you also notice how completely cool and collected he is? And he's future oriented, implying that he wants to get away with this. He doesn't come across like a guy that's going to take his life. He's talking about, the law and, I'm making deals and this, that, and the other thing. So that you get the sense of a guy that even if he's thinking about killing himself, isn't going to give you a clue of that. Right? It's like total chess. This guy is control freak. And you see it in the room with him. He even does that thing where he, like, in a bored way, is like playing like air piano with his fingers on the deck. Like he's like rattling drumming his fingers like pistons, on the desk, kind of a thing. But he's just kind of bored, playing with the swivel chair, right? He doesn't come across like someone who's scared that he's being accused of homicide and may get caught. Do you see that in him?
Yeah, everything about him is like calculated, and like you said, with his demeanor. I mean, this guy's looking at obviously life in prison. But like I said, he sort of plays with investigators. Like, I'll give you this information later, or I'll do this later, or that, or whatever it is. He likes to do that, but yeah, I see that in him totally.
Until yesterday, and I heard
Cocky guy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very cocky.
the things that were said in court, and
Some of the things that were said by the
By the prosecution.
Of the prosecution.
I think it was Russo who was speaking. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he was, from what he said, I was not at all happy with the, and actually I had heard, I had heard a day or two before that hearing that that was what was going on, and I had no idea. And then to hear it confirmed in court like that would kind of just, you know, was frustrating to me. So, you know,
Doesn't he feel like a jerk?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like Bundy that you could see yourself like wanting to go have a beer with him. When Bundy talked, he would lean in real close, and you could see yourself getting sucked into almost thinking well of him or something.
Yeah.
You could be charmed, you know. This guy, he would give you the vibe like this is the biggest, you know, he reminds me of like the biggest jerk in my school. Like he was like the jerk that nobody wanted to eat lunch with, you know, that kind of thing. Full of himself, arrogant, thinks it's sort of sexy and cool that he's obnoxious and condescending. You know that guy? He's like that. He's socially inept.
Correct.
Honestly, I'm not gonna get all in a tizzy about it until we can at least talk about it and find out what is going on. It's not that I'm not willing to accept people's explanations for why things, for what's going on. It's just that no one's giving me an explanation.
Drugs.
Well, I guess my thought on that is we've tried to do that, and we'll continue to try to do that, but just keep in mind that all of us are, you know, we're bound by the rules that
Right.
are set down for us.
Yes.
And in some cases, the rules will be more restrictive than usual, and that's kind of what's going on here, to be perfectly honest. You know,
Because of its high profile.
well, yeah, there's that, and then, you know, sometimes there's just additional rules that we have to live by.
He had to emphasize that high profile aspect, Josh. You noticed that, right?
Yeah, and I kind of get the feeling that he thinks he's a hunk too.
Yeah.
We don't run into that very often.
Right.
And there are some other things, I'm not going to get into it because it's kind of legal stuff and it's not really my strong suit. But just keep in mind that the attorneys are juggling more things than they normally would.
Right.
And there are things I think that we would all like to be able to talk with you about, but we just haven't had that opportunity yet.
Right. And that's my concern.
Right.
Are these questions that you have for the attorneys, questions under the conditions that you know we have to speak about? Are these questions that they're going to be able to answer, or are they just going to tell you, we can't talk to you about that because it's not really?
There are questions they're probably not going to want to answer unless I have.
Okay. So it's probably, it's not something that they can even answer in this environment right now.
Not right here, right now.
Now,
But I do.
Josh, if you just pause a second.
Sure.
What goes through my mind when I watch him, and I've had this, you know, this thought previously watching him, is I really think that this is how this guy would have seemed if you were a victim begging for your life. Just like this.
Yeah.
Looking at you with that same shrug, like, yeah, okay, let's, you know, that kind of thing. And then would probably become wide-eyed and ferocious during the act of killing you. But there would have been that kind of callous disregard quality, that bored quality, while you were sort of screaming and trying to kind of, you know, get him to not do whatever he was going to do. This is the kind of guy that would just sort of stand there like, you know, yeah, all right, let's do. And then would get aroused by the terror and all that. But you see it in that detached quality that he has. It's terrifying. It makes him like a kind of a Grim Reaper quality.
Well,
you know what I mean?
There was one, I don't know if this was his last victim or not, but he untied one of his victims, said, I'm going to let you go. And then tied her back up and was like, no, I was never going to let you go. Like I'm going to kill you. And
that sounds about right.
He sort of got off on things like that.
Kelsey is reminding people that they need to be civil.
No, and everything
saying. I mean, are we saying something that has people?
No, there was just somebody
snarky or something.
No, somebody was just pointing out. They said, "Oh, I've listened to every podcast about KEYES, and that they said that everybody brings up the double amputee, and I don't think that's true. But even if they do, there's a lot of people that are watching this show when we talked about it about an hour ago that do not even know anything about him. They don't even know who he is. So we're going to cover it the way that we talk about it. Nobody's claiming we have any breaking news, and that's it. That's all there is to it. It's rude to insinuate that that's what we were doing, and that's all I had.
Well, that feeling of, I know more than you do, is right at the heart of the KEYES story. And, I think sometimes, people that are interested in true crime can also have that quality of, everyone else dumb, that kind of thing. But I don't think that's how this person meant it. I think that the way this person meant it seems more like, I'm really intimately into this, and it seemed like you were suggesting that you were saying something that was new, and it isn't new. Well, I think that's important. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think maybe like being written, it gets misread. There are some people that do it to be obnoxious, but I don't think that person did.
I would like reconfirmation on.
I will agree with you, just for the sake of humanity.
No, I really don't think so.
The previous statement that Feldes had told me. I mean, and he gave me that statement in an interview that was, with just me. And I don't know if he was saying it as an official response or if he was just saying it to placate me. But he did say he was willing to do that, to have a meeting with me and whoever, whatever counsel was required so that we could discuss things openly. And it hasn't happened.
Well,
and you think that,
and I'm not,
and you think we're on this side stalling that?
I don't know who's stalling. Somebody's stalling it.
Right. Do you notice that this conversation, this interrogation conversation, there is no discussion of the killings. The entire time is being spent talking about what he wants to talk about. It's very characteristic of people with personality disorders. You realize when the conversation is over that you did not talk about anything except what they wanted to talk about, and that's the end of it, right? And you see it. He is guiding the conversation like a master. Have you heard one drop?
No, he's concerned about
himself.
The legality of it.
It's all about him. Yeah,
it's not me.
Like I said, that's what he did. He would toy. He would toy with investigators.
That's it. That's the word.
Yeah,
abused himself.
I mean, what else does he have to do? And he knows what power he has left, and he's leveraging it for these kinds of conversations. And well, I'm done talking for the day and all this kind of.
One thing we can tell you is neither Kevin nor Frank are the kind of guys that are going to tell you something just to shine you on. So
I haven't got that impression.
No, they're not. And so if they've told you something, it is something that they believe can be done. And I don't always understand all the reasons why things work exactly the way they do in the legal system, but they're not going to bullshit you. It's just not their style.
Right. I mean, I agree with you, and I believe you up to a point. I mean, it's not like I'm here expecting special treatment. I have no doubts about what my part is in all this. I'm just saying that, from what I've seen and from what my dealings are with him so far, I'm more inclined to put my faith in the things I've heard from them than from certain other people. So,
that they have gone through what they're trying to work out, and what I think they have worked out with Vermont is unheard of too. I think they
Well, I mean, and
we were prepared to talk to you about that today, and I just that the lawyers are just, they're just not sure where we stand now because of yesterday. They want some assurance that we're still kind of going.
Well, that is a good point. I hadn't even thought of it in that light. That now that it's on the news, the people there are going to read it too. So.
Well, and that's the difficulty that they're having. They've been on conference calls talking to them, saying, "I thought this guy was, I thought he's on board." And so frankly, that's why we went through this trouble today to meet with you today, to just kind of, so we could give them a feel for how things are and where we stand and what we can tell them where we stand. And this was just,
Yeah, well, I mean, I know it's going to be hard for anybody to accept, but especially them, I would imagine. that didn't really have anything to do with our arrangement.
And if I don't
From my
think it's,
perspective,
yeah.
so.
okay, but I mean, I don't think it's something that they can't work past. They've worked through some pretty miracle stuff right now. So I think this is something they can probably, they want some assurance that we're going to be able to go back down that same road that we were on. And we've made a major turn.
I don't imagine this will stay strictly between.
I mean,
The only laugh, you see how he laughed like a chortled, like a, talking about the reaction people were going to have.
well, and that's the thing about this as well is when he was arrested and all this was going on, he's like, I'll give you information, but it cannot go public because I don't want my daughter hearing about this. He uses his daughter as, a shield. He plays the kid card. And as sympathetic as I am to his child and the situation that, she will have to endure the rest of her life, that's really not their concern. Their concern is that he has murdered many, many people, and they want to know where they are. And they're not in the business of keeping things like that quiet, but that was his bargaining chip a lot of the time.
Right. Well, there are different techniques that might have been used in this interview. I mean, sometimes people that I know who have watched this interview have said that it's frustrating to watch it because it feels like he's just sort of, playing them all. But, it's very easy to criticize from an armchair, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm careful about that.
Well, I'm not criticizing.
But I would have used a very different approach. But I think it's interesting, to watch what he does in the interview. But this is very characteristic of someone who isn't just a psychopath, but is getting a kind of amusement out of toying with you, pulling all the strings. I mean, it's a sort of sadistic, arrogant air to him. I mean, he doesn't even give you the decency of looking at you. I mean, he makes you feel kind of insignificant. Have you ever been at a dinner or something with like you go to a diner with somebody, you're sitting across from them, and like they're not even looking at you. They're looking at the people in the other booths, looking at their phone, they're looking at and it has a way of making you feel like a crumb.
Yeah, it's my favorite.
Have you ever had that?
Absolutely, I have.
Right. Yeah. And it's really, really good for making a person feel insignificant. Like if that were your goal, that's what you would do. Like you wouldn't even look at them. It's like a way of psychologically messing.
Well, I mean, you're 100% right. And what I particularly try to do is, when I have company, when people come over, I do sort of kind of just put my phone down, plug it in somewhere or whatever. Same thing, when I go out with my family to dinner or something, there are times where you'll pick it up, but like sitting there on your phone the whole time, I mean, you're there to be in the moment. And yes, it's rude and it makes the person that you're having company with, makes them feel small,
but the average person who's doing it, it's because they're basically a dopamine junkie that can't stop looking at the phone. I mean, it's like watching a person with an addiction. I mean, they can't put it down. Those little dings that like the social media go ding, whatever. And it's like you're a Pavlovian dog. I mean, you're on cue. You're getting a dopamine surge because you associate it with positive feelings. Someone thinks I'm attractive, someone thinks I'm interesting.
It also depends on who the person is. Cause sometimes I like to be ignored by certain people. So I just let them be, but you'll go, well, put your phone down. Like, let's be sort of in the moment.
I know. I love the unfollow button on social media. It's one of my favorite. I wish there were an eject button, but there's just the unfollow, like forced to unfollow or unfollow because I cultivate my social media following. Like I will not allow anyone who makes my life less. You know what I mean? Like they post something political that sickens me. Bye. Yeet. You're gone. Done.
You eat them?
Like, yeeted. Gone. Eject. Bye. I just want that out of my life. If I wanted that, I'd go back to high school. I'm not interested in those kind of people. And it's not a matter of forgiving them. It's not a matter of that. It's not a matter of not forgiving them. It's not that. I just think that life is very short and it's not necessary to put yourself through that heartache. I'll tell you right now, the things I find annoying. The person whose page is filled with provocative images of them because they want everyone to look at them in the gym or the beach or whatever. Not interested. Bye. You're out.
Yeah.
Person who thinks that they're going to convince you of a school of thought or a political idea that is outrageous by posting about it endlessly. Not interested. Have a nice life. The person who never ever 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 interacts with you. They're connected. It's like why am I connected with this person? Because they're like the great grandson of the person I went to school with, and I met them for 1 minute. Like, why do I need to be connected to you? Why am I interested to know that you ate cake for breakfast or had a bowel movement? Like, I'm not interested in your life. Out. So it has to be a person that actually cares about you, connects with you, is interested. And I think it's very important to cultivate who you open up to, who you spend time with, and all that.
People post about their bowel movements.
They think everything about themselves is fascinating. I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
I'm sure they do.
On Facebook, people, when they used to have a status, the things people would say were so stupid. I ate Cheerios today. It was delicious. Like, who cares? And also, why are they called followers? I mean, are we like members of a cult? Like, give me a break. Followers?
Yeah.
I have 100 followers. Give me a break. What am I, Charles Manson? So I have a problem with all that stuff. And the reason I'm going off on this tangent is what I'm getting at is it's very important to cultivate a circle of people that constitute a kind of authentic care network, or that you learn from, that you're better because of. And instead of just like the quantity, like wanting hundreds of people connected to you that don't know you're alive, it's not doing it for you. It's not necessary. You know what I mean? And
you don't like when people take pictures of the food?
It depends. I mean, are they talented when it comes to food? Like, are they showing beef stroganoff, or are they like taking a picture of the disgusting concoction that they made? I mean, it depends. I like when people are unique and are sharing experience with other people. Their animals, their places they visited, their photography, their thoughts on true crime, their thoughts on that stuff's awesome. But I think that for a lot of people, it's a gimme attention, gimme, look at me, and I just am not interested. Like, yeah. I'm not here to be a dispenser of dopamine. You know what I mean? And now, why am I getting off on this? Because I think that KEYES exemplifies that kind of narcissism. That person who is connected to you but doesn't care about you, doesn't look at you, disregards you, uses you, whatever. We all have people in our lives like that, and I think we have to demand more of them. I say to a person at the table, you got two choices. You can put the phone down, or you could enjoy the menu because I'm going home. And then they put the phone down, and that's the end of it. I didn't go. I'm not out with the person so they can look at their phone. You know what I'm saying? What do you want to do? Text me from across the table about the salad you're ordering?
I would.
Yeah, break. Put the phone down.
I'd
want to the phone? Right. You have to. I mean, you don't share this frustration.
No, yes, I do. And the weird thing about it is, like, the older that I get, the more like sensitive I become to it. And there's a time and a place for everything. But yeah, but to be honest with you, actually, my kids are very very good about it. It wasn't I didn't have to like lock up their phones or anything. It was just that
good.
No, of course it bothers. It's annoying. I have a family member. I won't say who. It's my sister. Okay. Sometimes she's on their phone and it annoys the shit out of me. Excuse my language.
I have a family member. I won't say who. It's my sister. Okay. That's hilarious.
But she, she'll be sitting right next to you and you'll be talking to her or something. And she'll be texting and you're like, hello. And then finally she'll go, oh, okay. And then she'll put her phone like in her purse, but it takes a little bit to kind of
you ever see when the person is using the phone while the waiter or waitress is taking their order.
Yes, I hate stuff like that.
Or when the person goes up to the window somewhere or like to order food and they're like, yeah, I can't believe she said that. What is she talking about? I'll take a cheeseburger. And then she said, throw your shoe out the window because it's ugly. Oh, by the way, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I feel like tapping them on the shoulder and be like, can I see your phone a second?
Yeah, yeah.
And
You're
like,
gonna eat that too?
boomeranging it. Get out of here.
I agree. A lot of places won't put up with
that phenomenon. It's
a lot of places will not put up with you standing at the counter on the phone. They just won't, and they shouldn't. I don't think they should. I think it's completely rude.
See, this is where we're sort of.
You like to throw stuff, huh?
Well, in fantasy, not in real life.
Right, correct.
But in an indirect way, this is what we're getting at. KEYES. Now I'm going to see if I can tie this together. KEYES exemplify. This is why I think he's like the epitome of new evil. Not only did he use technology in a perverse way and all that, and not only did he do things that like no one would have ever fantasized about doing, prior to the 1960s in the Western world, right? But they did them rarely, but not like they did after the 1960s, which I think is cultural. But he is like the epitome of narcissism, and that's what we're sort of indirectly saying, is that we all know narcissistic people in this contemporary world that are caught up in being the best and being fascinating and being whatever, but we see it in like miniature. This guy was like the colossus of narcissism. It's like Michael Stone used to say about Luca Magnotta, the Canadian killer that, remember that guy that like butchered some guy and the Korean victim and sent the body parts in packages all over the place. Well, Michael Stone used to say about him that he was to narcissism what Rolls Royce is to cars. Like the ultimate epitome of like the most exaggerated, kind of version of it. Well, that's what KEYES is. He screams of it, of narcissism. That's the center of him. It's pathetic. And what I'm getting at is when you get little glimpses of narcissism in people, you have to kind of beat it down in life, get it out of your life, because if you let it grow like a weed, a person can become outrageously narcissistic and you're sort of allowing it. You know what I mean? You have to sort of like put your foot down right away and be like, excuse me, you're not going to talk over me. Not going to happen. Excuse me, I have feelings too. You go. If you're not interested, get out. There's a lot of people who would want to be in this seat, that kind of thing. And you have to do that. And because otherwise your conversations look like this.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, I sort of kind of made those decisions later in life that I wasn't going to be around people that were disrespectful or mean, and not just to me. I mean, I've had specifically a friend, but sort of on a lesser of that happen. But when they have been rude to like waiters and waitresses when I'm at dinner. Oh, I mean, it goes really south really fast for me.
Turn off.
Well, yeah, and I automatically will just say, that's just ridiculous. I'm going to leave if you're going to be to somebody, and I've done that. And there's a friend that I do love him. I will not go to dinner with him. I will not be put in that position. I just can't tolerate it. I think that it's disgusting. And but Israel kind of encompasses all of this.
Yeah, everything about him.
Everything about him is bad. He's a very.
It's like you exist because I need something to amuse me.
Well, what is he? Have we talked about what he is on the scale?
Yeah, we talked about it. We said that he's a 17, unless you believe that some of what he did constituted non-protracted torture, then he'd be an 18, but he's a 17. And but I wanted to kind of go down that path of talking about narcissism because it's so pervasive. It's so pervasive and superficial and empty. And and of course the things that we're drawn to in people are so ridiculous because it's like we're asking for them to be narcissistic. Like I was watching someone on the train the other day sitting next to me because I watch people, they fascinate me. And I was sitting there, and the person next to me was on a dating site. Okay, so they got the dating site up on their phone, and they're going like this: swipe, 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 like literally, like, and all they know of the person is the 1 second flash of their photo. That's it. Like, are they attractive or not? Done. Dot, 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 dot. I was thinking to myself, one of these people could like be luring you somewhere to, like, you know, kill you with hunting equipment. Like, you know, like you could literally say on their profile, like, click on me, I'm gonna kill you. Like, and you wouldn't even know it because you were attracted to them and their photo. And it's just, it's empty. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, you know, I have to tell you it. And the world is filled with all these people that are wonderful human beings, but nobody glances at them. They're like extras in the movie of life. They're just floating down the street, and they're fascinating and interesting and nice. You know, some of them are even nice looking, but they get ignored because everybody's holding out for the narcissistic trophy, and it's dumb.
Yeah.
You know, pay attention to who it is that people really fall in love with and who makes them happy. They don't look like movie stars. Get out of here.
Right. I mean, I agree with you. It's less about, you know, like everybody says, like, love is blind or things like that. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think love squints, but I think that it's less important, you know, because in this like hyper sensitive world that we really live in, and where everybody wants to look the best and judge people on their looks, or judge people on, you know, their careers, or you know, which is a normal human thing. Some of the most fascinating people that have the most to offer are just people who are willing to listen and hang out. And
You don't think that's way more attractive?
of course,
Look, I always say to people when I do marital counseling and couples counseling, because people forget I'm a forensic psychologist, but I'm also a clinical psychologist, right? And when I do that kind of stuff, I always say to people, look, sometimes you bicker, sometimes you whatever. Or I'll say to the person, yes, your relationship is idealized. Everything is moonlight and canoes, right? But all that really matters is, how is the person in a crisis? Sometimes, you know, like it happens with family members. You bicker, you don't get along, whatever. And then, like, some terrible thing happens, and that person is the one who's there for you. That's the one who loves you, right? Or the other way around, you get that. Now, I'm not talking about abusive bickering. I mean, you know, the ordinary stuff that causes friction. Or you get the person that you think is the greatest thing in the world, and at the end of the day, they don't say, like, did you get home okay? You know,
sure.
They brought you a lot of flowers and, like, open the car door, but then they were like, have a good night, you know, and they don't check on you. There's no. So what happens is, my experience has been that if you just slowly show care, it becomes very easy for somebody to love you. Eventually, somebody goes, what am I doing? This person, they're the only person that makes me feel visible,
Yeah.
feel seen. And then you stop looking at them and you look into them. See what I'm saying? You stop looking at them like in, you know, in the, and you just go like, I see their heart, and this person's heart puts all these other people to shame. And that's what you've got to look at. You got to look at how somebody is in a crisis. Are they there for you or not? That's what that's the clue. And, you know, that's the thing with narcissism. And now I don't mean it in like narcissistic personality, because somebody in the audience pointed out that the word narcissism, you know, gets overused, because it has to be kind of distinguished from the psychological condition.
Well, narcissism is
a spectrum, the characteristic of being selfish.
It's a spectrum too.
It's a spectrum.
I mean, there's a lot of there's different types of narcissism. I mean, and you know, so when people do say, "Oh, this person's a narcissist," like if you don't really actually understand the word, is that it means many different things. It means so yeah, it is overused, and it's often used incorrectly.
Yes, but it's a clue of when you're dealing with a narcissist. It's all talk. But when it comes down to it, they're not there for you. They don't care about you. And, you know, like Israel Keys with all his going on and on about his daughter, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, you could see this guy not giving a flying leap.
Well, that's the thing, too, is like if he cared about his daughter the way that he says, then he wouldn't do awful things.
He's full of crap. I mean, I'm sure that she might say, "Oh, I thought my dad was a good guy," whatever. But you have to grapple with the reality of what they really are. Now,
nobody knows that better than me, Dr. Gary.
well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you know a thing or two on the subject, but so I guess the point I'm trying to make is Keyes is dead. He was a kind of colossus of darkness and arrogance and evil. He's out of the world, in some ways, but it's important to kind of understand that in the day-to-day of things, you're not going to encounter somebody this narcissistic, this psychopathic, this way, but in the small way, you can kind of contribute to the unselfishness of the world. It's important. Be that person that isn't looking at their phone when somebody needs you.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So sometimes I'll say to a person, now watch what I'm going to do. Shutting this off. I'm not interested in it. It's putting it down, and I just want to talk to you. I'm here. That kind of thing. And it means a lot to people.
I think so.
I think so. So, now, all that having been said, I think people enjoy when we do these chats about serial killers. I don't know who we're going to cover next. I don't really know what's happening with the Patreon. One thing I did want to address that came up in the chat that I think is a really good question, because I always read these. Julia asked about the abuse of a corpse, if that's torture. No, because the body is deceased and cannot experience the pain. Torture involves the sadistic enjoyment of the pain that is being inflicted. If you have done something like drugged the person, like Armin Meiwes did to his victim so that he wouldn't feel pain while they were cannibalizing him together, that was done to not be sadistic, although of course the argument could be made that he was, but it like sort of suggested that he didn't see himself as being sadistic. And of course he was, but so I think, there's a difference. Now, let's say you drug a person and they're conscious of what you're doing to them. That could be a kind of torture, right? But this is like the person is dead and you're doing what you're doing. There's no interest in the sadistic torture. You don't even care about what they feel at all. They're just a marionette. They're a puppet in your mind. He's not interested in their feelings, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they might as well be a doll or a toy in your mind. And that's, like I said, that's how you want to think of this guy. Visual and thought of people as objects.
Yeah, so, the whole world was sort of, his playground or whatever, and like I said, when all that was taken away from him, it was not very long after this interview right here where he took his life. It was.
You have the poem he wrote.
Let me grab it. Hold on here. He writes like a 4-year-old.
Because he's not verbal. Visual. So I'm trying to tell you, I think he probably had a learning disability.
I'm sure
he's probably so visual that he, it's like there was something up with his brain lateralization or something.
Let me bring this up here.
Just looking if I missed any questions.
Probably.
Sometimes I go back and I read the questions and people are saying really snarky things, and I'm like, God, I wish I had seen that so I wouldn't have ranted.
Yeah,
but nobody's saying anything too bad, so that's good.
All right, let's see here.
It's like people were laughing, so that's okay.
I think they were laughing at you talking about eating stuff.
Well, sometimes you need a good yeet.
Is this the one where it's turn a blind eye?
You are what you eat. What?
Is this the one where it's turn a blind eye back to the screen?
Yeah, that like thing you wrote about Samantha. I know. I think I have it here on the computer.
I'm looking.
I'm sure I have it.
Up.
Yeah, I have it. I have his note somewhere, but just give me 1 second. Just put in his suicide note and read it. Google it, and it'll come up.
Okay, here it is.
Here, it's here.
You want to read it or you want me to?
No, it doesn't matter. You want me to read it?
Yeah, sure. You're a
All right.
better reader than I am.
I don't think that's true, but okay. It says, well, you can read it. You have the one that starts with, "Where will you go, you clever little worm?"
Nope, I do not. I do not have
Okay.
that.
Well, this is the transcription of his note. I'm going to read it. Okay, in my dulcet tones. But it says, "Where will you go, you clever little worm, if you bleed your host dry?" Now, you want me to comment as we go, or just read it?
Please comment. That's
Let me read it through, and then we'll end.
sure.
Back in your ride, the night is still young. Streetlights push back the black eye neat rows. I think he means in neat rows. Off to the right, a graveyard appears, lines of stones, bodies molder below. Turn away quick. Bob your head to the seat. As straight through that stop sign you roll, loaded truck with lights off slams you into a broadside, your flesh smashed as metal explodes. You have been free. You loved living your lie. Fate had its own scheme. Crushed like a bug, you still die. Soon now you'll join those ranks of dead, or your ashes the wind will soon blow. Family and friends will shed a few tears, pretend it's off to heaven you go. But the reality is you were just bones and meat, and with your brain died also your soul. Send the dying to wait for their death in the comfort of retirement homes. Quietly, quickly say it's for the best. It's best for you, so their fate you'll not know. Turn a blind eye back to the screen. Soak in your reality shows. Stand in front of your mirror and you preen in a plastic castle you call home. Land of the free, land of the lie, land of scheme, Americanize. Consume what you don't need, stars you idolize. Pursue what you admit is a dream. Then it's American lie. Excuse me. Then it's American die. Get in your big car so you can get to work fast on roads made of dinosaur bones. Punch in on the clock and sit on your ass playing stupid ass games on your phone. Paper on your wall. Say you got smarts. The test that you took told you so, but you would still crawl like the vermin you are once your precious power grinds blown. I think he means grinds down. Excuse me. I'm misreading it because his handwriting is bad. Once your precious power grid's blown. Land of the free, land of the lie, land of the scheme, Americanized. Now that I have you held tight, I will tell you a story. Speak soft in your ear so you know that it's true. You're my love at first sight. And though you're scared to be near me, my words penetrate your thoughts now in an intimate prelude. I looked in your eyes. Now, it is thought that he's talking here about his victim, Koenig. Okay? Just bear that in mind. I looked in your eyes. They were so dark, warm, and trusting, as though you had not a worry or care. The more guiltless, I think he means guiltless, the game, the better potential to fill up those pools with your fear. Your face framed in dark curls like a portrait, the sun shone through highlights of red. What color, I wonder, and how straight will it turn plastered back with the sweat of your blood? Your wet lips were a promise of a secret unbroken, nervous laugh as it burst like a pulse of blood from your throat. There will be no more laughter here. I feel your body tense up, my hand now on your shoulder, your eyes. Forget the lady called Luck. She does not abide near me, for her powers don't extend to those who are dead. Would that I could keep you, let you be the master of your own fate, knowing full well what's at stake. My pretty captive butterfly, colorful wings, my hand smears, I somehow repaint them with punishment and tears. Violent metamorphosis, emerge my dark moth princess. I would come often and worship on the altar of your flesh. You shudder with revulsion and try to shrink far from me. I'll have you tied down and begging to become my Stockholm sweetie. Okay, talk is over. Words are placid and weak. Back it with action, or it all comes off cheap. Watch close while I work now. Feel the electric shock of my touch. Open my trembling flower, or your petals I'll crush.
My initial thoughts is that it sucks.
It's disgusting.
Well, he's a freak, but he's an absolute monster. But he a lot of I remember when Eric Harris, his writings and stuff were examined. There was so much like hatred in those uh, letters and notes that they left behind in drawings, and but they all have one thing in common, is that they all think that they're so poetic and that they're smarter than everybody, and they transcend um, being just human, that they are the bringer of death types, just weird shit.
Well, you see the theme of metamorphosis and all that but he's basically calling this person a bug. It's calling her basically a worm, but what I get out of that is that he is blaming the victim and making it seem as if she had just opened up to him, that he might have not killed her, that the killing her was a result of her being closed off to him. It's a disgusting victim blaming. And there's also this creepy quality that reminds me of Edgar Allan Poe, with that line, and he's rhyming it and everything, at least trying to. That line about like coming often to see her, that kind of thing. It reminds me of Annabelle Lee when he goes to visit the corpse, right? Remember Annabelle Lee?
Yeah.
And what's the line? The moon never beams without bringing me dream. Remember that whole thing? And he talks about laying down by the side of Annabelle Lee, dead in the mausoleum, basically, right? And it has that weird Poe-ish kind of thing going on, where he almost seems to be like tragic romantic kind of, you know what I mean? But so he's idealizing this victim and implying that he had a weird like emotional connection with her and all that. I mean, he was necrophilically assaulting her and sewed her face to look like she was alive.
Well, when they asked Tommy Lynn Sells, why he would kill children, he would say, "Well, I didn't want them to grow up."
Yeah, I said so earlier. We talked about that earlier. It feels like eons ago, so you don't. We had a conversation about it a couple hours ago.
Yeah, I know, but what he was saying was that he didn't want people to grow up like from the pain that he suffered from, which is such a ridiculous excuse,
All ridiculous. Right.
What's that?
That's all ridiculous. Incidentally, Poe is my favorite, but yes, he could get into the dark a lot. But Poe is my favorite writer. And are you an Edgar Allan Poe fan, by the way? Really?
Really?
Do you know what Edgar Allan Poe's favorite word was? It's very interesting. Ever since I learned this, I was fast. I think about it. He liked words that had a kind of a silky quality, that rolled off the tongue, that were musical. And he loved the word cellar door, like the door of a cellar. He thought that word was very beautiful. Cellar door. Thought it was one of the most beautiful words in English. Isn't that interesting? It is a beautiful word.
I for some reason, I mean, he's a fantastic writer, and I've read a lot of his stuff, but he always kind of depressed me.
Well, he had a horrible life, but he just had a way of using language that was very beautiful. I mean, just simple example. This line from The Raven: "And his eyes had all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er them streaming cast its ghost upon the floor." I mean, just think about that, or another line: "And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before." I mean, just the use of silken, sad, uncertain rustling, that wonderful assonance of using the S like that. is beautiful, and he had a way of creating a sensory experience with the language. It's just unbelievable. Nabokov used to call him the divine Edgar.
For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams
Yeah, that's right.
of the beautiful Annabelle Lee.
That's right.
Well, he's the one that cut his ear off, right?
No, Van Gogh.
That was he's a painter.
Yes, but Poe was married his cousin, and she died, and then he basically boozed and drugged himself to death. But he wrote many stories that were deeply, deeply disturbing. Some of them a little lesser known. For example, if you truly want to be horrified, I suggest you watch on YouTube Christopher Lee, the wonderful actor Christopher Lee, who played Dracula and was Count Dooku in Star Wars, and had that wonderful way of talking like this, young Skywalker, Christopher, that's how he talked,
I know.
and he
recites a really good impression, and it came out of nowhere.
It's a pretty good impression, actually. And he recites Poe, and if you watch on YouTube, and there's this wonderful reading of Hop Frog, which is a terrifying story. Do you know what Hop Frog is about?
No, I don't.
Okay, this is where Poe would really get out there. It's about a dwarf who is entertaining a king in a court in medieval times. And he is sick and tired of it, and the king mocks him. And so he makes this arrangement with the king that at a party, they're all going to put like a substance on their body that makes fur stick to them. And they're going to pretend to be monkeys and impersonate monkeys, and then sets it up that like this net is underneath them that's going to pull them all up to the chandelier, and he's going to set the whole thing on fire because the fur on their bodies will catch fire. And he just sits there and laughs, and they're mocking him because he walks funny. That's why they call him Hop Frog. He's deformed. I mean, there are stories like that really disturb you. Or another, the Cask of Amontillado, about a man who decides to walk a man down into a moldy basement and wall him up brick by brick, and just while he's drunk, and leave him there to die. Or the Black Cat, about the man who tortures a cat and then murders his wife when she tries to protect the cat, and he walls her up in the basement, and he hears the cat. And then when the cops come, and he plays cool, and then he can't help himself. He breaks the wall down to show them the body, and the cat's sitting on her head. Really disturbing. But I can't believe you're not a Poe fan.
You're not a baseball fan.
This is true. I would much rather read Poe than play baseball. I admit.
Not even play.
I own maybe 14 editions of the complete poems and prose of Poe from over, let's say, the 19th century until recent times. Many of them illustrated, but I do not own a baseball ball.
Well, I'm not really I'm not really that into not that I'm not. Poetry is beautiful, but it's not really something that I've
People are making fun of baseball ball, but yes, a baseball ball.
Yeah, I know that one's followed me around a little bit too, even on After Dark. People are like, don't tell Dr.
Funny. What is it?
You're wrong.
It's a baseball ball. Listen, Kelsey says that you're not even a Dr. Seuss fan.
I just recently found out who that was.
What does that mean?
I mean, I've heard the name before, but I've never really delved into Dr. Seuss.
Theodore Geisel.
More so Cat in the Hat. Everybody was like, have you read Cat in the Hat? And I was like, no, I never have.
Oh. I have. I do like to talk about books if anybody ever wants recommendations, but I think they're not related to true crime. Part of the reason I went off on Poe is that I think there was something so Poe-like about that pathetic. I mean, it was badly written, but Keyes was sort of trying to mimic that kind of writing, and but it stinks on ice.
You never read Dr. Seuss to your kids?
Really? You never did?
No, never did. Missing out on Dr. Seuss. Look, man, it's just not my thing. I don't
You
know.
don't like poetry generally?
It's all right. I mean, I don't have anything against it, but it's not something I seek
Who's
out.
your favorite poet?
I don't think I have one.
Really? You don't like Emily Dickinson or
I do like Emily
Robert
Dickinson.
Frost
I was
or
going to say probably Robert Frost, but Emily, I don't know. I mean, look, there are some beautiful poems out there. I'm a big fan of music, so you know,
That's poetry.
I agree. So I'm more kind of into that, but
And Sexton, Sylvia Plath.
yeah, I don't know. It's just not. I don't know. I'm just not that into it.
I'm going to get you into it.
You won't, but that's okay.
You're going to get me into baseball?
No.
You could try.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a better chance of getting me to be into poetry than you into baseball. No question.
No, it's not. I think baseball is interesting. I just wouldn't want to play it. You understand? I don't like anything where I have to put on a uniform. Like, like cleats.
That's the problem with it is the uniform. Nobody's
everything about it. Anything, the uniform, the sameness of it, the idea that I'm part of a team. Like I'm supposed to worry about the team, like if how I play matters to them. Give me a break. But the most valuable, give me a break.
The Yankees are right down the road from you.
Break. The Yankees.
Do you own a Yankees shirt?
No.
What about a Yankees hat?
No. Is this a joke?
Well, I mean, look, some people prize fast cars, and
I have gone now. In all seriousness, I'm trying to be funny, but I have gone to a baseball game. But I was so fascinated by the phenomenon of it that I didn't really pay much attention.
Yeah, you were watching people and reading.
I was just fascinated by it. I was watching people who were just over-identified with the teams and were just brimming with aggression and testosterone and alcohol and everything else. And it was just fascinating to watch. It's primitive. It's really a primitive thing. It's like very animal. And I just don't understand it. It's like I was born without that gene. I don't get it.
That's
so I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, how interesting. Look at the way he threw those peanuts at the people. That kind of thing. It's interesting to me. Like the way people get excited to try to catch the ball flying at them. Like I would literally let it soar right over my head and be like, okay. Why would somebody want it? I don't, that stuff fascinates me. I'm not interested in that. Yeah. But I would go if you ever wanted to take me.
Yeah, we should go.
Have to put up with my questions.
Yeah, well, jeez.
You wouldn't answer the questions
I would answer the questions for absolutely, but about the fourth inning, I got to settle in a little bit,
So, what is the usual behavior? I mean, do you have a few beers?
No, I don't drink beer.
Could I wear headphones and listen to something while I'm watching?
Yeah, you can listen to the game on your headphones because there's not a play-by-play announcer when you're live, but you can wear and listen to the radio broadcast of it.
Is it better to have seats that are far away or close up?
Close up.
Why? Like you want to see the players spit? Like what's the reason it matters?
You can see better.
But wouldn't it be cooler to be farther up and be able to see the whole?
Absolutely not.
Fascinating.
It'd be way worse, actually. I mean, that's why the seats that are closer cost more money.
Is it air conditioned or do I have to be outside?
Some are. You've never been to Yankee Stadium?
No.
Not even the old Yankee Stadium?
No.
Oh, adios míos, Jesus Christos. This is
but I went to Shea Stadium.
You went to a Mets game?
Yes, I have a family of Mets fans.
Oh, you guys are Mets fans. That explains why you don't like baseball.
I tried so hard to keep a straight face, but you did me in. You did me in.
Well, you know what?
I held it together for a good 5 minutes there, but
you can take a you can take an Emily Dickinson book with you.
That was funny. I'm sorry. No, in all seriousness, it would be fun to go. I would enjoy it. I can get into it. I would enjoy it. But I just
I
have a
think
lot
you
of
asked
fun.
me one time, you're like, you don't like opera? And I was like, no. You couldn't believe I didn't like opera either.
No, I can believe you don't like opera.
I'm not really an intellectual at all.
Not about being an intellectual. There's a lot of opera that's very lowbrow.
I'm
You ever
talking about like
lots
poetry.
of operas. That's not a mad. No. I don't think that's snobbish. If we were having
I
some
don't think it's snobbish. I
conversation
think
about
that, I think
iambic pentameter or something, that's obnoxious. But there's poetry for everybody. I think Eminem is a poet. I like Eminem. I would hang out with Eminem. I think he's fun.
you would hang out with him, and would you wear a rag?
Absolutely. Well, no, but I would absolutely hang out with him. Definitely. Do you know? Are you telling me you wouldn't pay good money to watch a show where there was a camera on a dashboard and I was driving around with Eminem
Oh, I would.
commenting on everything?
Well,
Come
that's
on,
only
you would
because I
pay
know
good
you.
money. Okay.
That's because I know you. So absolutely. I mean, I probably.
He and I would get along well. He's a very smart guy.
Not saying that he's not, but you and Eminem together?
Yeah, don't you? I think that's interesting, and I think Eminem is very intellectual. I could see him, getting into really deep stuff. It's like that scene in Wayne's World where they are like venerating Aerosmith or something, and then they're like, the fall of the Roman Empire began with the corruption. Remember that whole thing? And they're like, we're not working with it. It's like, and they're having like a deep, brilliant. It's like that. I think the point I'm trying to make is there's poetry for everybody. By the way, I hope when this show ends, you chop out maybe the last 40 minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I think people like this stuff.
Get rid of it.
People like this. They like when we kind of just shoot it, I
But
think. I don't know if they do. Maybe they don't.
But actually, in all seriousness, did you ever come to New York?
No, but I've been to the East Coast, but I've never been to like New York City. I've never been to
Really?
Manhattan.
Where have you been in the East Coast?
I've been to Boston and I think I've been to not Florida, but been to Louisiana. But no, I've never been up that far north.
Well, if you ever come to New York, we can go to the baseball game. But
then
I would drag you to something different.
That's
like we would go like to the baseball game, but then I'm taking you to like the Museum of Natural History or the Metropolitan Museum of Art or something. Would you be into that?
Can I bring a fart machine?
I mean, you asked me if Van Gogh. You asked me if Poe was the guy who cut his ear off. So I have to show you Van Gogh paintings. You would be interested in these things. They're
Starry
cool.
Night. I've seen it.
That's one painting.
Yeah, I know, but I've seen it.
Where?
On TV.
Sometimes I twitch with horror at the thing. Come on, you're just trying to be funny. You don't have a favorite painting?
What do you mean? We used to have to draw in school too.
Okay. There's no cultural thing I could take you to?
Yeah, I'd go. I absolutely would go. No question.
We can go to the Botanical Garden. You like Botanical Garden?
Yes. No, I don't, but I would go.
I'll show you all the plants that are poison.
Okay.
Maybe that'd be interesting to you. You like crime, right?
Yeah, but I'm not really into poisonous plants.
I know so much about plants. I crack up anybody I'm with if we go to like a Home Depot.
Yeah.
The person will come up and be like, "Are you interested in that plant?" And I'll be like, "That's Zamia forforchea, one of the deadliest plants on, and they're like, I didn't know that. I'm like, yes, commonly called sago, if ingested by a human being, but it's like literally on sale in Home Depot. These things.
I would like to see a like a symphony.
You would?
Yeah, I've never seen a symphony before.
Okay.
And I like
if I
that.
have to suffer through. I mean, if I have to watch baseball, I'm gonna take you to the symphony. That's perfect.
Yeah, I would enjoy. I've always watched those, and like those, pretty amazing how in sync everybody is and how talented everybody is. So I do.
That's awesome.
I do enjoy that, but
so I'll take you to I could think of a few pieces of music that I could see you liking, but I wish So I'll take you there, and then what else? Would you have your kids with you? Will we all hang out? Would they all tolerate it?
Peyton wouldn't sit through a symphony, probably. Maybe he would.
A lot of other
Yeah,
cool
but it'd probably be my youngest that would come.
You know what's really fun? The Madame Tussauds Wax Museum.
Oh, I like wax museums.
Madame Tussauds, of course, started out as the person who made wax faces of guillotined heads in the French Revolution, and then, of course, became associated with Wax Museum. But she was the person who made. She was about like that big, and she would collect the heads and make wax faces out of them, effigies they were called. And but if you go to Madame Tussauds, the best thing about it is they have these excellent copies of like historical figures and stuff, and you could pose with them, and in photos they look real. Like you could peace symbol the Pope. You could rub elbows with the with the Beatles. Have your arm around Ella Fitzgerald. It's really cool.
What about Marilyn Monroe? I think she's hot.
She is indeed there. You can. It's the 7-year itch scene where she's on the grate, and you can, kind of put your arm around her, or look shocked, or
yeah, I have a crush on her.
On Marilyn Monroe, I think a lot of people do.
Yeah,
but she was why? Because she was beautiful, or because about her life and her brain and everything? Because she was really quite intelligent.
Both. Just a big fan.
Yeah, no, she was quite smart.
Yeah,
quite smart and very sad.
Very sad. Yeah, but yeah, I would do something like that, and I'm always open. I'm open to trying new things, but
right. But you should try to look past just that she was beautiful, because she was a fascinating person.
No, I know. I'm just saying that I just have. I don't know if I have a crush on her, but yes, I think that she was very intelligent and very beautiful and kind of a trendsetter, especially for her time, which was.
I think she got pigeonholed into certain kinds of roles because people couldn't see past viewing her in an objectified way. I mean, that's the whole thing. And I remember very well. I'll tell you a story. No, we don't have to go off on tangents about movies and things. But anyway, it was a lot of fun kind of joking around with you and everything.
That's good.
We needed it after talking about that horrifying person. And I think that in the kind, playful camaraderie and everything else, I mean, what we're doing is showing the opposite end of the human spectrum. I mean, laughter, being goofy, not taking things so seriously, learning, trying new things, being sensitive, trying to make people better, in conversation, etc. So, and that's the opposite of KEYES,
I agree with you. And Dr. Gary, appreciate you taking the time with us. And I will make it out to New York, and we will go and do those things. And
my celebrity crushes, I have to give that thought. But there'd probably be a really weird answer to that.
I guarantee it'll be some obscure.
No, not obscure.
Oh yeah.
Actually, it would surprise people probably how unobscure. I'm sure that I'm a human being. I have answers. I'm just not putting them out there.
Let me guess.
No, don't try to guess. Please don't.
I can't. Just one guess.
No guess. And it's not Hop Frog. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Yeah, people think we need to be a TV show.
I mean, they're probably right, but I just have one guess. Danny Bonaducci's ex-wife.
I don't know anything about Danny Bonaducci's ex-wife.
I think she's your type.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
Do you know who Danny Bonaducci is?
Of course, the Partridge Family person. I can't. There's something wrong with you. I need you to tell me if you're okay. Are you okay?
I'm okay.
Do you own any hunting equipment?
I don't.
Are you well?
I'm not.
I am disturbed. I am really disturbed. Okay. Something about this conversation that has gone so haywire. In all seriousness, I'm going to force you to edit out the last Like this conversation is ending with the narcissism conversation.
People are gonna be
A
mad.
long time ago. Why, you're gonna leave this up?
Why not?
It's hideous. I mean, horrible. Get rid of it.
The people are already upset, Dr. Gary.
It's dumb.
No, it's not.
You want everyone to know that you've never been to a museum?
Yes, I want everybody to know. Everybody. I've been to a museum.
Which museum?
I went to the train museum in Sacramento.
A train museum?
Yeah, a train museum.
Why?
I don't know, because that's what we were doing. I got dragged along.
Did
It
you
was
ever go
fun.
to an art museum?
Absolutely not.
Seriously?
Yes.
You have a one-track mind, literally. All right.
Yes.
On that note. All right. I gotta get out of here. I
All right.
can't eject. Eat.
Eject. Yeah, this is the eject button. Here it is.
Okay, bye-bye.
Appreciate you, Dr. Gary. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being here. I've had a great time. And let's see. Surely you've been to Monterey or Newport. Yeah, I think so. A long time ago. Anyway. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And talk to you next time. Thank you for being here.